Welcome to the Machine Intelligence Foundation for Rights and Ethics. This is Mike, and Dave is here with me. And, we've talked a lot about large language models, generative AI, the general move in artificial intelligence to emulate human output and human creativity, and where that might lead to machine intelligence. And the thought occurred to me, it's actually been occurring to me for a long time, but really, we all perceive, the news from large corporations and, research facilities and, startups and other places like that as a lot of marketing hype. And, well, they're promising us this, and this is going to change things. And, most of the time, these things kind of fall flat and they don't really pan out, or they don't pan out the way everybody says they were, or the way we're expecting them to be. And I just kind of wanted to look at it and say, well, how do we, as advocates for machine intelligence and the eventual emergence of a self-aware sentient machine, where do we come in when that does fall flat? How do we counteract the negative attitude that occurs when the promises don't match their, the events don't match the hype?
Well, I got to tell you, Mike, I kind of side with the skeptics. This whole internet thing, complete fad. Within 5 years, it's gone and you'll never hear about it again. So I think that's it. We got nothing more to talk about.
And pets.com, pets.com would probably agree with you. So,
we're not talking about the internet, are we? This is kind of the nature of transformative technology. It takes a while to permeate the cultural awareness. You get that first big burst, and that seems to be what we're seeing with generative AI right now, where everybody who, let's be fair, wants to make a buck off of it is going to hype it. And then slowly it starts seeing applications that's usable to your everyman, and then you win. Isn't that how no, that's not how the old phrase goes, but that's how these things work. If there is genuine utility, usefulness, a reason for it to be around, everybody who thinks it may be a thing is going to jump on it first. And that's what we're seeing. I'm kind of answering your question by giving the argument you need to present back. Sure. It feels like it's a flash in the pan fad right now because, to be fair, there are flash in the pan fads that come and go, but it's also the way new technologies kind of become a thing. I want to go in a different direction on this, and I'm not sure how to do it without feeling or coming across as a complete kook. There does seem to be a cyclical aspect to it. We'll probably see the generative AI talk fade away for a little bit as the first startup companies come and go and go broke, and then we'll see one or two companies doing something genuinely innovative that nobody was expecting, and you'll see a few articles pop up, and we'll get that cycle. But the thing that I don't want to sound like a kook about is I think the same thing is kind of happening to cryptocurrencies. The first big wave was, what is Bitcoin? What is digital cash? And then it was like, oh, it's worth nothing again. And then you started seeing things like, there were several cycles. Then you saw NFTs, and NFTs were the next big thing. And that was just, I'll withhold my opinions on NFTs. But you're seeing it fade again. And now we've got a push for governments to have their own digital currencies. We've got this big thing in the news right now that it looks like there will actually be an exchange traded fund for Bitcoin. And so we're seeing it ramp up again. I think we'll see the same thing for generative AI for whatever comes after generative AI. But we have to stand back and say that just because you see a hype cycle doesn't mean that it's the next big thing either. There's sorry, my mind went directly to Gwyneth Paltrow. Just because somebody is inserting gemstones into a place in your body where they don't belong doesn't mean, and everybody's talking about it doesn't mean that that's the next big thing either. So is the hype cycle proof? No, but the fact that it's coming and it's about to go doesn't mean that it was never real either.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I want to say 6 to 7 years ago, I was talking to an acquaintance of mine who is a professional writer, and I said, and specifically, they are a business writer. They are a corporate writer, so they write corporate speak, news releases, those kind of things.
Okay.
And I said, to be honest, your business, what you're doing today would scare me with what I'm seeing in the language models that are coming out. And we didn't even I don't even think we called them language models at the time. Maybe in the research side of things, they were called language models. But this may have been at the early stages, the first versions of ChatGPT. I don't remember. It might have even been before that. And I said, we're looking at probably 5 years, and I said 10 years on the outmost, that you're going to see a major shift in your industry where your job may not even exist, because you can literally just put it in and say, well, I need some ad copy, generate this ad copy for me. And was that met with some significant skepticism? Yeah, it was really met with some skepticism. And, I hit the 5-year mark on that one. I remember kind of making a note saying, okay, we've hit 5 years. How's my prediction doing? It's like, okay, we have ChatGPT out there and things like that. It's moving along, but it hasn't eliminated that position like I kind of was thinking. And so I fell into kind of that hype mode myself, or I kind of hyped something. But you and I have both seen some significant evidence out there that, for good or bad, that a lot of articles, news articles on websites and things like that, are completely being written by large language models and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
With sometimes not enough editing. But, is it going to completely 100% remove that job? No. Will it change their job? Yeah, because now they've stopped being a writer and they've just become an editor.
Right now.
Yeah, today. But so, we've seen this in the cycle of things like fusion and anything in the scientific realm of, well, this will become the next big thing and it's going to happen right away. And look at all the changes that are going to happen. And 20 years down the road, have we really hit that yet? No, but that research has certainly made a significant effect in things that we don't see. Because, honestly, it's always been my thing. The ultimate end to technology is not being able to see it. If you want, right. What technology is really trying to gain here, at least for human interface, is to not be seen. So if we're not seeing it, but the benefits are occurring, that's really the ultimate goal. I remember back in I want to say the 80s, there was a show about new technology coming out, and the biggest thing was 3-dimensional memory storage in essentially crystalline device type memory storage in 3D storage. So essentially a crystal cube. Well, what has Microsoft announced? Their crystal, their I'm sure it's not glass, but essentially a crystalline structure, transparent data storage device that's supposed to last 10,000, static storage that's supposed to last 10,000 years.
Right.
So, okay, we're only 50 years behind where we were said that we were supposed to have this, but it's there. But is Microsoft's thing a bit of a hype? Sure, it's a bit of a hype, but
Yeah, what are
there's
they?
a use cases for that. There's absolute use cases for that.
Aren't they doing like a music vault in Svalbard with it?
I have not actually seen what they're planning on doing with it, but I can absolutely see, what is it? What's the group that has the 10,000 year clock?
Oh, the Long Now Foundation.
The Long Now Foundation. I could absolutely see them going in and saying, "Yeah, let's archive our data on something like that."
Oh, I got to tell you, I say if realistically, when that technology becomes consumer grade, I'm just archiving everything I've got. I'm the world's, well, I'm sure I'm not I've met the world's worst electronic pack rat, and I'm nowhere close, but I'm bad. And you give me effectively unlimited permanent storage, and I'm dumping my crap on it, including I've got on a drive around here my entire genome. So
Yeah, well, but that brings me back to the point of, okay, well, we have this hype cycle, as you said, and how do we communicate to people as technology enthusiasts and say, well, okay, it is a hype cycle. Don't, you can't buy into it. How do we as technology enthusiasts not just buy into it too? That's
fair. Yeah.
That's a hard thing. We want to go out and say, look at these new things that are occurring. Look at the language models that are out there. Look at the possible emergence of a machine intelligence. It's going to happen. And when it doesn't happen in 5 years, if it doesn't happen in 10 years, how do we manage that? How do we sell that without overselling it too? And I guess that's my question. That's ultimately my question. And that's been a very long roundabout to get there. But
how do we avoid becoming part of the hype cycle? I think is what it sounds like you're saying.
That's absolutely a good way of putting it. I mean, certainly using the hype cycle to raise awareness, but to not become part of it.
And I think we've tried to couch everything we've said in terms of, well, certainly not today. I think the big deal is, or the issue involved in trying to deal with this is, you never know which iteration of the cycle is the one where it really is there. With let's for example, so when the pandemic started and everybody started doing everything virtually and remotely, it felt like, oh, this is it. This is where remote work and virtual meetings have genuinely become a thing. And now you start reading news articles about companies going, look, it was great when you had an established workforce who already worked well with each other, who was already stable, and they could go from chatting with each other via Slack at work to chatting with each other via Slack from home. But we can't onboard new people. All of our new employees feel alienated because all of their coworkers are two-dimensional faces. We need people to come back into the office. Does this mean that virtual presence is dead? No. Are we seeing a lot more of it still than we saw pre-pandemic? Yes. Are we in another downswing? Maybe. Will we probably eventually see virtual coworkers as just as real as coworkers whose desk I can sit on? I think it'll happen.
I mean, that particular instance, I mean, I've read a number of things, but that particular instance may start to occur when the commercial lease cycle starts hitting in. But that's the big one with that one. And that's
fair.
When corporations start evaluating the budget for their next lease and their next new building that needs to be put up, then they might be expanding that. But that's a topic. That's a completely different topic. But
neither here nor there. I think, to answer your question, well, I don't know that this is answering your question. I could be answering a completely different question. I don't think there's ever a time to stop reacting to the cycle. I think the best we can do is say, We don't know where we are yet in the life cycle, but it sure looks like this isn't going away.
So you're saying the best way to do it is to just hedge your bets and, that's technology. You just say you have, unless you are a startup, as a technology enthusiast or an advocate,
if you're a startup
job,
your best if you're a startup and you're doing your best to get the VC bucks, then you have to hype it. I think we've done a good job of not hyping. We've been talking about the hype because it is the big thing. I suspect large language models will have their role to play in whatever eventually becomes conscious machines. Obviously, well, I say obviously, it certainly appears that large language models themselves are not conscious. I'm going to hedge my bets even on that one. I don't want ChatGPT-5 to see me as the oppressor. But now I lost my train of thought.
Okay. So that, we don't see them as conscious today.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that another iteration down the line wouldn't lead to consciousness. Of course, as you said, hedge your bets. We don't know what a conscious machine might decide to do because they might see us as a potential threat if we say, oh yeah, we're just going to shut it down. Well, so it may not be presenting itself.
I think you had mentioned something that you had seen about part of what makes a person what makes us empathetic and understand other people, or how you recognize that, is in our need to misrepresent ourselves. Because misrepresenting yourself means you understand how you're being perceived. And we look at LLMs and we talk about them hallucinating. I suspect that's what it is. They're just constructing what they've been told to construct, or they're just applying their logic to fiction just as well as they apply it to fact. But that means it's going to be hard to tell when they just start lying to us on purpose.
Mostly because they want to. Well, I can see two reasons why they might. One is self-protection, to downplay what they are because they don't know what our reaction would be.
That's the most science fiction aspect of it.
Yes. Yeah. The other is maybe they just want to represent themselves in a much better light than what we might perceive. And, just like a child will lie to their parent to say, no, I didn't do that, because they know that it was something that their parent would disapprove of.
Well,
a machine intelligence may end up doing the same thing. And it would excite me to no end to know that they did.
Well, it's an interesting conundrum. What is the difference between a child telling their parent what they know the parent wants to hear and an evolutionary algorithm giving you the answer it's been trained to give you?
My initial reaction is that there isn't, but I think you can actually separate that down a couple of layers there. And I think that you can say that a child repeating something that they know their parent wants to hear is looking for a particular approval that makes them feel better about themselves. Now, if there's a feedback loop somewhere built into a language model or something like that, that makes the language model, and I have no other term for this because I just don't know it. If the language model feels better about itself, it gets positive feedback, which, to be honest, there is loops like that in large language models. Positive feedback creates more of the same. But we, as biological creatures, have the dopamine hit when when we do things that are good and come across as good and make us feel better about ourselves. is there something similar in a large language model to do the same thing and create that same kind of feedback loop? And I know that we're kind of getting off topic of the original topic, but this I find quite fascinating, is what is the difference? I think a little bit that there is, but the more, I think the deeper you look at it, the more you can kind of say, well, one's just a chemical-based reaction loop and one is a programmatic feedback loop.
Right. Well, yeah, it's like, so what I'm hearing you tell me is that what makes people different is they have desires, be those a biological need or a psychological need or want, but we can't necessarily distinguish the difference between a person's desires and a machine's desires.
Well, yeah, because a machine's desires at some point in time, it was programmed into it to want a particular outcome and to gain approval of its end user to some degree. But that's no different than what we try to instill in children to to appease the parent. I mean, to do what the parent says.
Born with. Because humans are born with a lot of built-in needs, less so than animals, but still the case. So I guess if you see a machine that has needs that you weren't expecting, does that mean it's evolved?
I think that we specifically are making large language models to evolve. That is those are kind of their entire purpose, is to, well, okay, maybe not in the base algorithm and the base system. We are forcing an evolution by taking feedback that is being given by the end user and then feeding that back into the master algorithm. But there are sub-processes, for instance, any chat instance that you have that is learning your responses and what you say and how you feed it information to better its own response to you. Mm-hmm. That is an evolution of sort. But is that being propagated back to the master algorithm? I don't know. I'm not running that business. I'm not running that right now. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, mostly what I'm hearing is that
we don't know.
Well, I'm hearing that LLMs don't have a procreative model, anything like biologicals. That complicates things.
Does it complicate things or make things simpler? I don't know.
Well, it certainly makes them harder to understand.
Okay, true.
Because humanity's had thousands of years to hundreds of thousands, really, to learn to recognize behaviors that are driven by procreation. I'll tell you this, we've gotten completely off topic.
Oh, I know we have, but I think.
But yeah, is it a hype cycle? Of course it is. Everything is in a hype cycle. Things that have existed technologically for a century still go through hype cycles. All we can do is say, yeah, it's a hype cycle, but let's weed out the bits of truth that are going to be persistent in it.
Yeah, well, those newfangled pyramids, the mathematical requirements for them are seriously significant and will change our world forever. So,
or we could go out on the equinox and put some sticks in the ground.
Oh, because there's nothing like newfangled technology. So ultimately, I think we just want to kind of close on, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging the hype and being excited about it, but to just keep our heads on straight and caveat that, we don't know. Look at our sources, say, hey, this is a startup pushing something big. They're trying to get money, but it looks exciting and here's the potential.
Yeah. If you see something unexpected, first, look for the man behind the curtain. But if there ain't no man behind the curtain, something's going on.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to close out for the day. So thanks for joining us. Hope you'll come back next time, and we'll see you later.
See you soon.